Now this is a series that has understandably had mixed reactions from fans. It is a new take on a classic, so does it hold a candle to the original Charmed? Hey guys, it's Kristen, and today we are talking about season 1 of the CW's Charmed. This is a reboot of the WB series of the same name that aired from 1998 to 2006. In this new series, we're following Mel and Maggie Vera, who are dealing with the sudden death of their mother Marisol. Several months later, they're surprised when an older sister, Macy, that they never knew existed, shows up on their doorstep. Once reunited, the girls learn that they are powerful witches known as the Charmed Ones, who are meant to battle dark forces and save the world from an impending apocalypse. Consider subscribing if you like my videos, and drop down in the comments so we can talk about season 1 of the Charmed reboot together. Let's start off with the good. First of all, I think they did a really solid job of introducing us to these new characters and their different personalities. There's Mel, who questions authority and always tries to stand up for what's right, but she can be a bit stubborn and quick to act without thinking, and she has the power of time manipulation. We have Maggie, who wants to have a normal social life. She's very sensitive and in touch with her emotions, and she needs to learn how to speak up. She's an empath. And then there's Macy, who's a brilliant scientist, but she's also very lonely and has this deeper insecurity of being tossed aside and abandoned. Her power is telekinesis, although there is something darker lurking in her past. We really get to see the ups and downs of this new sisterhood throughout the season and how their relationships together and with their white letter Harry grows so much. And Harry really becomes like a member of their family. One of my absolute favorite sisterly moments in the entire season was when Maggie lost her cap a bit and the girls made their own sisterhood and even initiated Harry. In this series, I think the elders are a bit more accessible than they were in the original series, although at times they can be pretty harsh and dark. But another constant plot point that I enjoyed this season was seeing the Charmed Ones figure out ways to do things on their own without having to follow the archaic rules of the elders. There were many times, from the Harbinger of Hell to Medusa, where the elders' plan is to just kill the evil being versus actually taking the time to figure out what's really going on. Because of that, the Charmed Ones were always able to find a way to do the right thing and to save the innocent people that needed to be saved. I also think that this show talked about a lot of important topics like the Me Too movement, the idea of questioning people in power instead of just going along with whatever they say, sex, sexual identity, race, women supporting women, and consent in all forms when it comes to making your own decisions. Something else that I really enjoyed about this season was this overarching idea of in-betweens. You know, that not everything is black and white, there's gray areas, you don't have to be just one thing. And I think we see that, for example, when Maggie learns that she's actually black and Hispanic when she finds out the truth about her dad, and she's kind of trying to figure out what does that mean for her in terms of her identity. They paralleled that with discussions of demons and witches and good versus evil. I found it particularly intriguing that the raw magic that both witches and demons covet are the same thing. You know, they come from the same place, and it's really about who's wielding that power. There are even episodes where we see innocence turned into something that's perceived as evil, like the Harbinger or Medusa, but that there's more to them than meets the eye. My favorite episode of the entire season was Switches and Stones, the Medusa episode, where we learn that Medusa came from a trio of witch sisters and that she was raped by Poseidon and then punished by being turned into a monster when it wasn't her fault. Macy really connects with Medusa and sees the truth of what happened to her, which helps set Medusa and everyone she's turned into stone free. That episode also really got me with its setup because we see the actress who plays Medusa several times in the episode before it's revealed who she really is, and I just thought that was so brilliant, the way that they kind of teased that. Another episode I really loved was Manic Pixie Nightmare, where we see Chloe the Pixie being tricked into doing evil things by a film student who literally stole her acorn heart. When she finally gets her heart back and realizes what this guy made her do, it is heartbreaking. Those emotional moments were just really shining lights to me, and I especially loved the episodes where we kind of got this Demon of the Week format, but also got a chance to progress the story forward in really meaningful ways, and I think those two episodes were really great examples of that. Another thing that's really great about the show is just how many references and connections there really are to the original Charmed. A few that stood out to me were Melinda Warren, the founder of the Warren Halliwell line, being in the Girls Book of Shadows, both Mel and Prue having cop exes, the Ouija board making a return. The Touched by Demon episode was really similar to Chick Flick, where Macy and Phoebe's favorite characters kind of came out of their favorite movies and TV shows, and of course when Macy closed the door to the house at the end of this season the same way Prue always did. And there were also a lot of really cool pop culture references as well, like Ariana Grande's Thank You Next, Freaky Friday. They even mentioned Jumanji, which was really cool because because the actor who plays Galvin is actually in that franchise. Those were just a few references that I thought were really fun to see throughout the season. Now, some of you might know that I was doing weekly Charmed reviews every week as season 1 was going on. We were all watching live together and talking about it the next day. I will leave a link to that playlist so you can go check out my individual reviews of each episode. But I think that one of the things that we all kind of felt while we were watching was that 1, the pacing was off, and 2, they didn't really use the Book of Shadows or have as much magic going on as we would have wanted. And now I did go back and rewatch the entire season on Netflix so that I could be prepared to do this review, and I have to say, after doing that binge watch, I think this story makes so much more sense. I think that the pacing actually was pretty good, and they do use the Book of Shadows a lot more than I remembered them doing, especially in the beginning of this season, and there is a lot more magic than I remembered. And I think the issue here is really that we've been watching this show for 8 months. There have been so many weeks of the show, there have been so many breaks in between, that it is really hard to keep that focus. I really think this is the kind of show that works better on a streaming platform because there's so much going on. Not only was I able to better understand the story, but I was able to pick up on moments that were important and even on some more subtle things that were being built up throughout the season. I do want to get into some negatives kind of around the world building and around some of our villains and supporting characters. I think there were a lot of places they could have gone with Alistair Kane and Charity and Fiona Callahan, and they just really didn't go as deep as they could have into their potential. Charity and Fiona specifically, I feel like, had very surface level reasons for their actions. You know, Charity was like, oh, I want to do things for the greater good, and Fiona was like, well, everyone wants to control me, so I don't like that. I want to destroy all magic. Okay, I would have loved to see more of a backstory for them, you know, maybe with Harry, showing flashbacks of their sisterhood and what tore them apart. I think with Fiona specifically, they missed a huge opportunity. I think it would have been really cool to see a story where we got her background, we felt for her, we understand where she comes from and why she did the things she did out of this anger, and then actually mourned her death. It just felt like everything was out of convenience. They could have gone way deeper and made us really love to hate these characters. In terms of that world building, you know, it would have been great to get those flashbacks to know their backstory. It would have been great to even see more of the history of the Vera Vaughn line and kind of see where their magic kind of stems from. And, you know, we got to see kind of a bit more of Harry's backstory and Galvin's backstory than anyone else, and I would have loved to learn more about these characters as well. I thought there were also some areas of this show that had some big plot holes, and one of them for me was the whole cop DNA case. Nico's partner Trip got framed for the Harbinger murders because apparently he figured out how Marisol and the other elders' deaths were connected through DNA. First of all, I could see now why Charity covered it up in such a gruesome way because, you know, obviously she was connected and maybe she was like, oop, he's gonna give up my gig. Except for the fact that, like, realistically it doesn't really make sense that the DNA would connect Trip to the murderer because it was a magical murder. How would he, like, know? He doesn't know anything about magic. Another storyline that didn't really make sense to me was around Tartarus. You know, so there's this magical object called the Scythe that was divided into 3 shards and entrusted to 3 sentinels, one being Marisol, so that people couldn't release anyone from Tartarus, which is essentially, you know, a magical hell-like prison. First of all, we see Alistair going after this object for no real reason other than, like, maybe someone can help him release the Harbinger. So I feel like there was no real motivation there that made any sense. It was just like a very weak plot point. And then the other thing is that once this Scythe is destroyed, it turns out that it's not the only way to get to Tartarus. So, like, this whole time we think that it is, but it's not. There's also this magical staff with a spell, there's also this gatekeeper, so, like, why did they specifically need this Scythe when there was, like, so many other easier ways to get there? That just seemed kind of pointless. Getting a little bit into the finale, I'm hoping that things now are really solid with the sisters and that this sisterhood is just going to be something intrinsically part of the show because there are going to be new showrunners coming on for season 2 that are going to be focused more on the supernatural aspects of this story. And so I do want to mention that, like, yes, this season does feel like a series finale, and I think that that is done purposefully so that they can wrap up the entire storyline that they did here because now they have a completely new team coming in to work on season 2. When these new showrunners come in, the sky is literally the limit. They can do anything. The story is kind of starting fresh. The issue I think that comes from this is that we've now already seen these girls take on the Source and face an apocalypse. That was something that took seasons upon seasons for the original sisters to take on. So where do we go from here? It feels like we've already hit a ceiling. I'm preparing for big drastic changes in theme, tone, storyline, and more things that we might not even be expecting. Like, I think it's gonna be a completely different show. But when it comes down to it, I do think this first season of the Charmed reboot was a very diverse, exciting, feminist, magical story to follow. Was it perfect? No, I do think that there were definitely some issues or things that maybe didn't work in the season, but overall, I think that they brought a solid story together following diverse sisters and witches who go on a journey to find their strength and build their family together. Does it live up to the original? You know, yes, it has the same name, yes, it has the same idea of like these three sisters who are witches. Yes, there are similarities and connections to both seasons, but I do think that they are very different, and I think that that's okay. This reboot is just another extension of the Charmed universe. You know, there is the original series, there's comic books, and this is just another extension of that. It's telling a different story, it's expanding the universe, and I think it stands on its own. This reboot won't take away your enjoyment of the original. Now both shows are streaming on Netflix, so really it's just more hours of this witchy sisterhood magical world. I recommend giving it a try, and I'm excited to see where this show will go in season 2. If you like this video, you can watch more of my Charmed reviews over here, and don't forget to drop down in the comments to continue the conversation. I want to know, who was your favorite sister? I really liked both Maggie and Macy, and what did you think about season 1? Leave your comments down below. Alright, see ya!